everyone. Today, we're gonna search for the zombie island. And let's explore it together.
Why this is called Zombie Island, I don't know either, haha. But stay with me, let's explore together. Don't leave too soon.
Oocha, this forest is really scary, my friends. No, Joel, this is terrifying.
Did you hear that, my friends? There was some sound. Could it be zombies? So, this is the place where zombies rise at night? Too eerie.
Oh my god, it's coming out! A skeleton! Wait, this isn't a zombie, and it's just bones, a walking skeleton. Haha, I was wrong, guys, it's not a zombie at all. I have to run faster. If not, they'll catch me.
They won't come in. What's stopping them? What are these markings? What are these markings? Who made them?
It seems there is something in here keeping them away. Whatever it is, the skeletons fear it.
Something in here. It keeps them out. But what is it?
Ha! A wooden chest? What could be inside? I'm too curious.
A martial arts manual? Wait, not gold?
So this is the secret technique. Bigfoot will crush every skeleton here. Come on then. You'll regret rising from your graves.
Wait a second, let me tell you a story. A really, really interesting one.
They don't believe us anymore. Not the sheriff, not the neighbors, hell, not even our kids pick up the phone these days. I'm scrawling this down because something's wrong out here, and if I don't get it on paper soon, I'm afraid it'll get worse. Name's Daryl. For 37 years, Jess and I have scratched out a quiet life on 240 acres in rural Oregon. We raise cattle, cut hay, pay our taxes, and mind our own business. We've seen the usual: deer on the ridge, elk in the aspens, the occasional black bear, and once a lone cougar. But what's been stalking our place for the last 8 months isn't any ordinary critter, and it's getting bolder. It started small. Last October, Jess noticed the hens weren't laying like they should. We keep about 40 hens in a coop behind the barn, always did fine through the summer, then almost overnight the count dropped to maybe 6 eggs a day. The birds looked skittish, huddled in a corner during daylight instead of scratching their run. I blamed varmints at first, fox or raccoon, and tightened the coop, new wire, reinforced latch, motion light. For a few weeks, things settled and we breathed easier. Then, early November, Jess went to gather eggs and found the coop door ripped clean off its hinges. Not broken, ripped. The hinges were still bolted to the frame, but the whole wooden door lay in the dirt 15 feet away. 40 birds gone, no feathers strewn everywhere like a fox'd done the job. No visible blood. The ground was churned, but offered no footprints I could make heads or tails of. It was like whatever did it opened that coop as casually as opening a can and walked off with everything inside. There was a smell too lingered for days, this wet, sour musk, like a drowned dog mixed with something I couldn't name. It turned my stomach. A week later, Bob Martinez next door started having trouble with his cattle. His herd, usually calm as church mice, were bunching on the far fence line, flat out refusing to graze the pasture that touched our property. Bob stopped by asking if we'd seen anything odd. I told him about the chickens, and he shut his eyes like he'd already heard worse. Then he admitted his border collie had been staring our way and barking through the night for days. That afternoon, I walked the fence line. The ground was soft from rain, and about halfway along I found prints I'd never seen in my life. 18 inches long, 8 inches wide, sunk deep like whatever left them weighed more than a man. The stride was huge, 4, maybe 5 feet between steps. I trailed them 100 yards into the timber before they vanished in the brush. Took photos with my phone, blurry, but when I showed them to Bob, he went white. He'd found similar tracks the day before and hadn't said a word. A few nights later, the sound started. Jess shook me awake at 2 a.m. It's outside. I listened. A low rolling noise from near the barn. Not exactly a howl, not exactly a growl, something in between, deeper than any animal I knew. It went on for 30 seconds and stopped. I grabbed the shotgun from the closet, crept to the window, and scanned the moonlit pasture. Nothing moved. Nothing at all. They were all huddled at the far end of the pasture, jammed as close to the fence as they could get. Every cow turned away from the barn, like something in that direction made them nervous. The sound came again, closer this time, and I knew without a doubt it was coming from behind the barn. I wanted to step outside and go look, but that noise did something to me. It wasn't blind animal fear. It had a cadence, a weight, like whatever made it was thinking, like it was trying to say something. Jess wanted to call the sheriff. I could see it in her face. But what do you tell the sheriff? There's a whispering, thinking thing hiding behind our barn. So we waited until daylight. Daylight gave me more to worry about. The big sliding barn door had deep gouges carved into the wood, long claw marks starting up around 7 feet and scraping down to shoulder height. No normal critter stands that tall and reaches that high without climbing. Inside the barn, we keep hay stacked neat as a wall. 3 bales from the back row were dumped right in the middle of the floor, like someone picked them up and dropped them for fun. Those bales weigh 50 pounds each. They'd been treated like empty boxes. 2 weeks later, I saw it. I was checking the herd at dawn when a figure at the tree line snagged my attention maybe 200 yards off. At first, I swore it was a person, just standing perfectly still among the pines. But something about the silhouette made my hand go to the binoculars. The closer look froze me. It wasn't a man. It was huge. The lower branches of those old-growth trees disappeared under its shoulders. It was covered head to toe in dark brown hair, arms that hung past its knees, shoulders like it could push a pickup truck, and its head seemed to sit right on its chest with hardly any neck at all. It stood there like a statue, watching me. We held that stare felt like an eternity, probably 30 seconds, and then it took one slow step backward and melted into the trees. One heartbeat, it was there. The next, gone, as if the forest swallowed it whole. I jumped the old Ford and tore down the track to the spot. But by the time I reached the edge of the timber, there was nothing but the lingering sour, musky smell, the same rotten dog scent that had clung to the chicken coop. I told Jess what I'd seen, and she didn't laugh or tell me to go back to bed. She just nodded, eyes flat, and said she'd been getting the same feeling like something was watching her while she hung clothes on the line between the house and the barn. When the real snow began in December, it wrote everything out for us in white. The prints were unmistakable. Fresh powder showed clear outlines, toes, an arch, even impressions of hair around the edges. The tracks crisscrossed our place like someone had been walking the lot on a leisurely tour from the woods to the barn, around the house, past the chicken coop, and back into the timber. Some mornings there were dozens of prints, as if it had spent the night pacing across our fields. What made my stomach twist was how close those prints came to the house. One morning, there were clear impressions right outside our bedroom window, pressed into the snow so close the thing could have peered through the glass with ease. The idea of that hulking shape standing outside while we slept, looking in, made my hands go cold.
It dared to call Bigfoot stinky hack. Should I teach it a lesson?
I put motion sensors around the house and the barn. The first night they went off 17 times between midnight and dawn. Each time the yard lit up, I watched the glow slice through the snow, but the light never revealed anything. It was like a strobe pointing at empty space. By January, with the prints, the scratches, the smell, and the noises, I knew we couldn't handle it alone anymore. We needed help before the next thing happened. It kept getting worse. What started as odd grew brazen, and I started to worry it would try to get inside the house. So I called the county sheriff and told them everything. The deputy who answered was polite, but you could hear the doubt in his voice, like he was walking me through a checklist for someone entertaining a tall tale. They said they'd send someone. 3 days later, a kid in his mid-20s showed up like he'd been sent on a coffee run. He humored me, took a few photos of the prints in the thawing snow, jotted down the gouges on the barn door, looked at the bent fence posts where something heavy must have pushed against them. He wrote everything down, smiled that half-convincing smile, and told me they'd file the report. When I told him I'd actually seen the thing, he offered the "we get a lot of bear calls" line. Bears leave big tracks, he said. Soft snow makes everything look bigger. I tried to explain that no bear walks upright 8 feet tall. He nodded and walked back to his cruiser, probably rehearsing the story he'd tell at the station. We never heard from them again. When the snow melted in late January, February came with a new level of activity, like whatever it was had decided this place was home. We found proof of its presence every day. Our garbage enclosure, the simple wooden pen we used to keep cans from tipping, got ripped apart night after night, not just toppled, shredded. The metal cans were folded and twisted in ways that would have taken industrial strength. Food scraps were gone, sure, but it scattered everything else like it was playing with our trash, newspapers, bottles, whatever was inside those cans. I moved the garbage into the barn, thinking I'd outsmarted it. Next morning, the sliding barn door was forced open. The lock had been torn off, the track bent. Inside, the mess was the same, cans emptied, shelves tipped, feed sacks ripped open. The smell that sour, musky stink hung in the barn, stronger than it had been anywhere else, like the thing had spent a lot of time in there. I found what looked like a nest in an empty stall, a crude bed of hay and old burlap, flattened like someone had been sleeping in it.
How dare you intrude on my domain? You will regret this day.
Up until March, it had mostly been me running into this stuff. Jess had heard the sounds, seen the prints, but hadn't had a face-to-face. That changed one Tuesday morning. We'd bought 6 replacement hens, and she was feeding them in the reinforced little coop closer to the house. She went out at 7 like she always does, carrying the feed. When she came back inside, she was pale and trembling. It took a good 10 minutes before she could tell me. She said she was filling the waterers when something moved behind her. When she turned, the creature was there not 20 feet away, just standing and watching. She described it as enormous, easily 8 feet tall, hair so dark it almost looked black in the morning light. Its face was a weird mix of human and ape, and its eyes, she swore, were intelligent, like it was thinking, sizing her up. They stood there, staring at each other until the thing made a sound. Not the low, rolling call we'd heard at night, but something that sounded almost like language. Nonsense, but with the cadence of speech. It wasn't hostile. It just turned and walked away, upright on 2 legs like a man, except twice the size. After that, Jess wouldn't go outside by herself. March warmed into April and the damage escalated. Fence posts started showing up, snapped, clean in half, always the posts along the back line near the woods. These weren't rotten posts. They were pressure-treated 6x6s I installed 5 years ago. They don't snap without a fight. Our equipment started getting targeted. One morning, I found the riding mower flipped on its back in the yard. That machine's heavy, over 400 pounds, and there was no logical way it had tipped over on its own. The next week, my utility trailer was 100 yards from where I'd left it, 2 tires shredded to nothing. I began stashing everything inside the barn at night, but it just found more things to wreck. It pulled down sections of split-rail fence, scattered the stacked firewood we'd spent days cutting and stacking, and somehow tore the metal roof off our small equipment shed. Every incident left that same awful smell and fresh, huge footprints to photograph. I must have taken 200 pictures by then, but no photo ever seemed to show just how massive those prints were. April gave us the worst of it. I woke around 3 in the morning to find Rex, our German Shepherd, cowering under the bed, trembling and whining. Rex isn't a coward. That dog had chased off bears without a second thought, but he was shaking like a pup and wouldn't come out no matter how much I called him. Seeing him like that made my stomach drop in a way nothing else ever had. I grabbed the shotgun and eased up to the living room window that looks out over the front yard. Moonlight washed the yard in a cold silver, and I could make out a huge dark shape prowling among the trucks and trailers. It was at my pickup, fingers tracing the metal as if trying to read it. I watched it twist the side mirror until it spun round like a bad joke. Then it climbed up onto the front of the truck, planting both enormous hands on the hood. The suspension sagged under its weight as it leaned forward to peer through the windshield. I stood there, rooted to the floor. Part of me wanted to fire a shot into the air, something to scare it off, but another part knew that any sudden noise or movement could set it off in a way I didn't want to find out about. It was less than 50 feet away. If it decided to test the doors or windows, I wasn't sure any of our locks would hold. After what felt like an hour but was probably 10 minutes, it lost interest, dropped down, and drifted toward the barn. I watched until the shadows claimed it, and then sat the rest of the night in my recliner with the shotgun across my knees until dawn finally came. Morning left, no doubt. There were handprints in the dust on the hood, impressions twice the size of mine, and the mirror hung twisted backward like someone had been playing with it. Fresh scratches marred the paint where it had run its fingers over the finish. By May, I was at the end of my rope and called the state police. The county hadn't done anything, so I figured a trooper might take us seriously. A sergeant listened and promised someone would come out. The trooper who showed up was older, more professional, and for a moment I thought maybe we'd get help. He walked the perimeter, inspected the bent fence posts and the gouged barn door, and studied the photos I'd taken. Then I said the word out loud, Bigfoot. His face shut down like a window. The same look I'd seen on the deputy, the polite pity of a man who thinks you've been out here too long with nothing but the wind for company. "We'll increase patrols," he said, and I could tell he meant it about as much as he meant to be anywhere else. Once his cruiser pulled away, I knew we were still on our own. June changed the rules. The thing that had been a night visitor started showing up in daylight. One afternoon, Jess was hanging laundry when she glanced toward the tree line and saw movement. At first, she figured deer, but then a massive shape stepped out of the pines and into the pasture and just stood there in plain view. In the sun, she could see things I hadn't. The hair was dark brown with streaks of gray at the shoulders, the face more human than ape, a heavy brow and deep-set eyes that didn't leer or snarl but seemed to consider her. It watched with a curious tilt of the head, like someone trying to figure out an odd machine. Jess kept hanging the clothes, eyes never leaving it. When she finished and began to walk back, expecting it to melt away into the trees as before, it followed, not running, not hiding, but moving across the field upright, deliberate, and calm, maintaining a 50-yard distance as if it owned the pasture. She called for me. I ran with the shotgun. By the time I reached the window, it was gone. By then, the prints in the soft earth were the clearest we'd seen yet every toe ridge. The ball and heel pressed deep enough to show the weight behind them. By July, whatever lived out in those trees had turned on our machines. It seemed to have developed a fury for anything with an engine. Our riding mower didn't just break, it had been dismantled down to guts. The engine was pulled apart, components scattered across 50 yards of pasture. The seat was torn away, the steering wheel contorted into a useless knot, and the deck folded up like scrap. The same week, the generator in the locked shed behind the house looked like something had tried to chew its way through steel. The door was ripped off its hinges, oil and coolant spatters streaked the ground, and the block itself was cracked in half. I bought heavy-duty deadbolts for every outbuilding, thinking at least the hardware would slow it down. 2 days later, every lock and strike plate had been wrenched off, chunks torn from door frames. This wasn't a creature picking locks or finding keys, it was overpowering anything we put between it and what it wanted. We have a small hunting cabin out in the timber, half a mile back on a trail I cut years ago. I hadn't been back there since this all started, but in early August I couldn't stand not knowing. I loaded the shotgun and followed the old path into the trees. The closer I got, the thicker that sick, musky stink became until it hit me like a wall. The cabin wasn't damaged, it was demolished. Walls pushed inward, roof caved, debris scattered like something had rolled through it. Torn fabric and pine boughs made a rough bed, and animal bones and food scraps lay about. There were even aluminum cans and odds and ends from our place tools, kitchen pieces, bits of clothing from our line. Someone had been living there, and whatever it was had arranged the loot around the shelter as if making a messy nest of familiar things. I didn't linger. The smell made my stomach turn and every hair on my neck rose. Even on my own land, I felt like an interloper in someone else's home. August only got bolder. The thing began coming right up to the house in daylight. It would cross the yard, poke around vehicles, peer into windows, and leave those huge prints all over the lawn. One afternoon while I was in town, Jess was at the sink washing dishes when she felt watched. She turned and the creature was inches from the kitchen window, its face filling the glass. She screamed and dropped a plate. It didn't flinch, just stared at her, curious, like a stranger inspecting a new object. When I pulled in the driveway later, I found Jess shaken nearly to pieces. The house felt different after that, not ours in the same way, as if someone had rearranged the rules while we were gone. They'd nailed every door and window shut, and Jess sat in our bedroom with my pistol in her lap, hands trembling. It took me nearly an hour to calm her enough to get the whole story out. That night, I boarded the kitchen window with plywood and kept the shotgun within arm's reach. This wasn't a nuisance anymore, it was terror on our own land. September changed it from curious to threatening. One evening, while I was bringing in the last of the cattle, that thing stepped out of the timber and walked toward us, not wandering, not shy, but deliberate, like it wanted a reaction. The herd saw it and panicked, stampeding for the barn and almost trampling me in the chaos. I fired a warning shot into the air. It stopped, turned, and let out a roar that I felt in my ribs, half growl, half scream, all wrong. Then it charged the fence, grabbed the top rail, and ripped a 20-foot section out as if it were cardboard, tossing posts aside like kindling. It kept watching me the whole time, making sure I saw what it could do. Then it walked back into the woods like it owned the place. By October one year, from the night the chickens vanished, our lives had become a slow-motion nightmare. We were prisoners in our own home, afraid to step outside after dark and always watching daylight for signs of it. It had made a schedule: show up every few days at dusk or dawn, sometimes stroll through and vanish, sometimes linger for hours, touching our trucks, poking into windows, leaving prints like a trail of punctuation across the yard. We slept in shifts, one of us always awake to watch. Rex, our German shepherd, was useless, now hiding under the bed until daylight, too frightened to bark. The cattle wouldn't graze the back pastures, sticking close to the barn. I even thought about selling the place, but who buys a farm with a rumored monster? And what if it followed us? 3 weeks ago, everything exploded. I was in the barn when Jess screamed. I dropped tools and ran with the shotgun. She'd backed into the living room corner, pointing at the sliding glass door. Pressed flat against the outside glass were two massive hands. The creature had its face to the door, shoulders filling the frame, arms impossibly long. It shifted along the glass, peering inside. I raised the shotgun. The creature saw the movement and stepped back, staring straight at me. We held that look like a held breath. Then, slow and deliberate, it raised one great fist and slammed the door. The whole house shook, the glass spiderwebbed with cracks. It hit again, more lines raced across the pane. I knew the third strike would send the door in. I fired a warning shot into the air. It roared back, that deep, ancient sound that seems older than the forest itself. It struck once more and shards rained on the deck. Then, as calmly as it had come, it turned and walked away. Not fleeing, not sneaking, simply leaving, satisfied. That was 3 weeks ago, and nothing's improved. It comes almost every night now, testing doors and windows, pacing on the roof, making those awful sounds that keep us awake until dawn. It even found its way into the attic one night, huge footprints in the insulation dust and that sour, musky stink up there with them. It moved our holiday decorations and family photos, but didn't smash them, more like it was reading our life. 2 nights ago, we woke to find the front door wide open. Neither of us had unlocked it. There were no pry marks, no broken lock, just the door standing open like a deliberate message. We're exhausted, scared, and running out of options. It had somehow opened a dead-bolted door without so much as scratching the lock. It had been in our house while we slept. Nothing was missing. Nothing was smashed. Still, everything felt wrong, violated. The one place that used to feel safe now felt like a stage the thing could walk onto whenever it pleased. We were helpless. Yesterday changed something in me. At the end of our quarter-mile drive, in the metal mailbox that's been there longer than either of us, I found a piece of bark. Scratched into the wood were marks intentional, repeated, not random. They weren't art. They were a pattern, crude and deliberate, like someone trying to write with a claw. I don't know what the marks mean, but whoever or whatever left them put them in our mailbox on purpose. That thought will not leave me. It's learning our routines, our property, our lives. Intelligence plus raw, ridiculous strength plus zero fear of humans equals something more dangerous than any bear or wolf I've ever faced. I'm 59. I've lived here most of my adult life. I've battled droughts, flood seasons, market collapses, and tractor breakdowns. I know trouble. This isn't trouble. This is something else. We tried the authorities. The sheriff shrugged. The state trooper skimmed his report and left. Neighbors cross the street when we pull up. Our own kids stopped answering their phones. We are alone with this thing, and it's getting bolder. I'm writing this because I need a record. If Jess and I vanish like that hiker up in Alaska, or if something worse happens in the night and no one believes the story, then let this be proof that we tried to tell people what was closing in on us. We aren't delusional or paranoid. There is something living in the timber behind our house. It shouldn't exist, but it does, and it's been watching us, learning us, and taking over pieces of our life. This morning there were fresh prints right up to the front step. These weren't the usual deep, solitary impressions. They showed extra weight, altered spacing like something was carrying a load. And on our welcome mat, placed there with purpose, sat a dead rabbit. Not torn open or ripped apart the way a predator would leave it, neatly set, as if offered. What is it trying to tell us? I don't know, Yesterday it was curious, today it's leaving gifts. I'm not brave enough to imagine what tomorrow will mean. The sun's sliding down behind the ridgeline as I write, and that sour, musky smell is beginning to hang in the air again. Somewhere out in those trees, something that should not be is waking up, stretching, moving toward the dark. If you live in country like this, heavy timber, mountains, places people don't go, pay attention to your animals. Listen for sounds that don't fit. Watch for tracks that are too big and too clear to be normal. If one of these things decides to interest itself in you, I don't think it ever really goes away. The motion sensor light just clicked on behind the barn. Through the window, I can see a massive shadow moving near the outbuildings. It's here again, and it's getting closer. I'm going to tuck this notebook where I hope it won't be found if something happens. Maybe someday someone will read this and understand. Maybe someone will finally believe us. If any part of this rings true to you, please share it. People need to know that the wild still holds things we haven't, cataloged things that are clever, strong, and utterly unafraid of us.